Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got 18 articles in this episode for you, so it's probably going to be a long one. Things to go over here from the Capitol. The first one here is off of WND, and it says, Trump calls critics bluff, will share intel on Obama spying. The smart move was to make all the materials available. And we'll get it scrolled down here so we can read it. It didn't take long for a buzz of electricity to crackle through the glorified shoebox. That is the, whoops, something popping up here. Get rid of that. Okay. The glorified shoebox that is the White House press briefing room. The news they'd all been waiting to hear. Network reporters jumped on boxes to do live reports, breathlessly passing on the news. The New York Times had just dropped a bombshell, and then to miss the lead. That was likely because the Times itself had buried the lead 10 paragraphs below the headline, which read, two White House officials helped give Nunes intelligence reports. However, the 10th paragraph read, but the officials' intelligence is in line with Mr. Nunes' own characterization of the material. In other words, the New York Times' own sources confirmed that the way committee chair Representative Devin Nunes, California, had described the information in key classified documents was accurate. And what Nunes had seen may prove President Trump's claim that former President Obama spied on him and his transition team. Still, the media remained fixated on how Nunes got the information and whether it was improperly obtained rather than what the information actually said, and why he wasn't sharing it with other key lawmakers, including the leaders of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. On Thursday afternoon, the White House dropped a bombshell of its own and announced at the start of the daily press briefing that it had invited leaders of congressional intelligence committees to review the documents Nunes had seen. Fell swoop, President Trump totally changed the dynamic in the hottest controversy in Washington by the criticism of Chairman Representative Devin Nunes, Republican in California, for not sharing the information with other congressional leaders. Congressional leaders access to evidence that may show President Obama spied on the Trump transition team. Yeah, to focus on the message instead of the messenger. Nunes had announced on March the 22nd, as WND reported, he had intelligence sources that on numerous occasions the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition, and details about those people were widely in intelligence community reporting, even though they had little or no apparent foreign intelligence value. When it was reported on March the 21st, the day before Nunes made his announcement, he had come to the White House to meet a source and review dozens of intelligence reports on Trump transition team acquired by a government spy. Nunes discussed the intelligence reports with President Trump, but said he hasn't been able to share the contents with others because he wants to protect his sources as whistleblowers, taking great risks to expose the wrongdoing. Essentially, the chairman has been waiting for the FBI, CIA, and NSA to provide information to the Intelligence Committee, which could the information his sources provided. Then the committee would know what Nunes knows. Seen. On March the 15th, Nunes and Intelligence Committee ranking member Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat of California, the heads of the FBI, CIA, and NSA asking for full account of surveillance activities by the Obama administration on the Trump transition team. WND has learned the committee has received a little information back, but is waiting for much more from all three agencies. If the agencies fully comply with the request, they believe the documents will shed a lot of light on the issue. Nunes has said the NSA has been complying with the request, but the FBI has not. Three spying agencies, only ones to whom the March 15th letter was addressed. The letter was also carbon copied to Acting Director of National Intelligence Michael Dempsey. member of the White House staff, advisor to the president on intelligence matters related to national security. Donald McGahn responded to the March 15th request by inviting intelligence committee leaders to look at the documents for themselves and determine whether the information collected on U.S. persons was mishandled and leaked. The White House letter also asked the committees to determine if the intelligence collection was proper, revealed improperly, and to the extent that U.S. citizens were subject to such surveillance. Violated? Our view was that the smart move was to make all the materials available to the chairman and the ranking member of the relevant committees, said White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. He added, "We want them to look into this all along. I think there's a belief that the president has maintained that there was surveillance that occurred during the 2016 election that was improper." Before the start of the press briefing, Spicer read from the White House letter to the ranking members and chairman of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees that said, "Course of business, National Security staff discovered documents that we believe are in response to your March 15, 2017 letter to the intelligence community seeking documents necessary to determine whether information collected on U.S. persons was Spicer then said, "We'll invite the Senate and House ranking members and chairman up to the White House to view that material in accordance with their schedule." As WND reported on Thursday, a former Obama official appeared to have inadvertently confirmed the president's administration spied on the president-elect Trump's transition team. Speaking on MSNBC March the 2nd, Evelyn Farkas, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under Obama, confirmed that not only was the previous administration collecting intelligence on the Trump team, share it as far and wide as possible. Farkas said that the reason for that was intelligence on Russia, and she is very worried because not enough was coming out into the open. However, since then, intelligence have seen the classified information in question, including Obama's own national intelligence James Clapper, as well as former acting CIA Director Michael Morrell. They have seen no evidence of collusion between the Trump team and the Russian government. Indicate the real reason the Obama administration there we go. That would appear to indicate that the real reason the Obama administration was feverishly collecting and sharing classified information was not for national security purposes, but for political reasons. For weeks, reporters have demanded to know, where's the evidence to back up President Trump's claim that Obama administration spied on him? Or the reporters demanded to know details about how Nunes got the intelligence information showing the Obama administration spied on the Trump team and where he got it. Nunes said he went to the White House to meet a source and review dozens of intelligence reports because that was simply the most convenient, secure location that had a computer connected to the system that housed the reports. Bloomberg News, we don't have networked access to these kinds of reports in Congress. Also said his source was an intelligence official and not a member of the White House staff. The story broke Thursday morning, claiming that a pair of White House officials helped Nunes get the intelligence reports. Reporters thought they had a smoking gun, proving administration colluded with the chairman in some nefarious way to obtain information. This look at the Times story shows that it said only that a pair of White House officials played a role reports to Nunes and assisted. Those vague descriptions did not indicate the Trump White House played any role in shaping the content of the reports. Ever since Nunes made his March 22 announcement, intelligence information, Spicer has reporters of attacking the messenger and ignoring the message, and Times story added gasoline to the fire. Spicer's sentiments were perhaps the best summed up by Craig Gowdy, Republican of South Carolina, who said earlier in the week, House or the Waffle House. What does it make if the information is reliable and authentic? line. The next one we have here, oh, is off of WND.com. Hamster to catch up. Poor little guy. I worked him hard today. Information up. Obama spying looks even, Trump claimed. The Obama administration on then President candidate Donald Trump reportedly was even worse than what he has alleged. And it has nothing to do with Russia, but everything to do with politics. In the intelligence community claim the potentially illegal revealing of names or unmasking of people in the Trump camp who were under surveillance was done purely for political purposes to hurt and embarrass and his team. The bombshell revelations come from rank and file members of the intelligence community who are fighting back against a stonewall by the leaders at the nation's spy agencies, according to Fox News. Housley said the sources are not Trump people, but are frustrated with the politics that's taking place in these intelligence agencies. It's amazing. Here's what they told Fox. Number one, surveillance targeting the Trump team during the Obama administration began months ago, even before the president had become the GOP nominee in July. Number two, the spying on the Trump team had nothing to do with the collection on foreign intelligence or an investigation into Russian intelligence interference. Number three, the spying was done purely for political purposes that have nothing to do with national security and everything to do with hurting and embarrassing Trump and his team. Number four, the person who did the unmasking was someone very well known, very high up, very senior in intelligence world, and is not the FBI. Investigators know the name of at least one person who was unmasking names. The initial surveillance on Trump team led to a number of names being unmasked. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Representative Devin Nunes, Republican of California, has known about the unmasking since January. Number eight, two sources in the intelligence community told Nunes who did the unmasking and who told him at least one of the names of someone in the Trump team. The sources also gave Nunes the serial numbers of the classified reports that unmasking. Number nine, it took Nunes a number of weeks to figure out to see those intelligence reports because the intelligence agencies were stonewalling him and not allowing the chairman or other people to see them. There were only two places Nunes could have seen the information. Sources' work, which would have blown their cover, executive office building on White House grounds, which houses the National Security Council and has computers linked to the secure system containing the reports he sought. Number 11, access to the system on March 21st with the help of two Trump administration officials, but said they were not the sources of any information. Journal's Kimberly Strassel reported that the documents Nunes saw confirming the Obama administration spied on Trump aren't easily obtainable. There were dozens. Well, wait a minute. Let me back up on that. Aren't easily obtainable since they aren't finished intelligence products that Congress gets to see. Dozens of documents with information about Trump officials. Strassel also reported there was a stonewall against the Intelligence Committee chairman because for weeks Mr. Nunes has been demanding intelligence agencies turn over said documents with no luck so far. That along with former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, one other Trump official was unmasked. Flynn resigned after his unmasking was leaked, part of reports that he spoke on the phone with the Russian ambassador before the new administration took office. President Trump said President Trump said the two discussed nothing inappropriate and Flynn was just doing his job. But the president asked for the aide's resignation because he was not completely honest in his initial account of the conversation. But even the reports that did not unmask identities were written in ways that made clear which Trump officials were being discussed. Documents were circulated at the highest levels of the government. Strassel concluded to sum up, spying broadly on the incoming administration. that Senate Judiciary Committee is looking into whether leaks of the information targeting the Trump team could have come from FBI because it requested Surveillance Act or FISA warrants that led to the acquisition of some of the foreign surveillance. Nunes has said the FBI has not responded to his request for information, and a source told Fox the agency is refusing to cooperate with the House investigation. Reported the Senate Judiciary Committee is looking into whether the FBI wrongly included position research from Trump's opponents and whether the FBI paid a former British spy who wrote a sensational and discredited report alleging wild improprieties by Trump and his aides. On Friday, Sean Spicer noted the day before the president tweeted his accusation that Obama had spied on him, comments were made by a senior administration official, foreign policy expert Dr. Evelyn Farkas. Previous reports that have been out raised serious concerns on whether or not there was an organized and widespread effort by the Obama administration to use and leak highly sensitive intelligence information for political purposes. Reported in depth, Farkas appeared to have inadvertently confirmed the former president's administration spied on elect Trump's transition team for political purposes. Speaking on MSNBC March 2nd, she confirmed that not only was the previous administration collecting intelligence on the Trump team, it was attempting to share it as far and wide as possible. Information about the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, but just days later, intelligence chiefs who had seen the classified information in question, including Obama's own former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, as well as former acting CIA director Michael Morrell, said that they have seen no evidence of collusion between the Trump team. That would appear to indicate the real reason the Obama administration was feverishly collecting and sharing classified information was not for national security purposes. On Friday, Spicer said Dr. Farkas's admissions alone are devastating, and that in the ordinary course of their work, NSC, National Security Council, staff information that may support the questions raised by the president and Dr. Farkas's claim. Issues, they raise serious concerns, and if true, be devastating. Reporters for ignoring the Farkas story and growing evidence that Obama did indeed spy on the Trump team, scolding them. If everyone was treating the president and the administration fairly, you'd ask a series of much different questions. Amen to that. Next one is off of BizPack Review. Running in the wheel. Come on. Poor little fella. Go. Exclusive. Nunes didn't do anything new by viewing raw intel at the White House. There's nothing about Select Committee on Intelligence Chairman Representative Devin Nunes leaving the panel's secure room beneath the Capitol building and heading to the White House complex or a related facility nearby to view raw intelligence, the Daily Caller News Foundation's investigative group has learned. Intelligence Committee chiefs have trekked to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue or to an intelligence agency to view such super sensitive intelligence materials because the Congressional Secure Room can't handle such material. Former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Representative Pete Hoekstra told the DCNF that if someone was going to present me with raw intelligence or unfinished intelligence, or with intelligence which was designed for use by another part of the government, yeah, it's very reasonable to expect that I would have to go somewhere else. And chaired the intelligence panel from 2004 to 2007. Nunes has been harshly criticized by congressional Democrats for his decision to travel to the White House executive White House executive complex to view raw material whistleblower about allegations the Obama administration spied on then Trump and his transition aides. Nunes' actions amount to collusion with Trump White House, according to Democrats. The New York Times Thursday went further, identifying two White House National Security Council officials who assisted Nunes. The New York Times concluded the unmasking of the NSC officials is likely to fuel criticism that the intelligence chairman has been too eager to do the bidding of the Trump administration. But Colonel retired Jim Warasuk, who served at the NSC, told the DCNF such viewings are routine, especially at the White House complex. Speaking from my experience, I talked to members of both sides of the aisle, he told the DCNF. I've done that 1,000 times. I say that's routine because it goes on all the time when you're dealing with Intelligence Committee or Armed Services Committees. Oblige them. Cleared committee chairman would go over to the White House once or twice a week. Warshak was also Deputy Director for Intelligence at the U.S. Central Command and is now Vice President of OPSEC, a nonpartisan group of retired Special Forces and intelligence officials. The members of Congress don't get to see raw information. Fred Russman, a 24-year CIA veteran, told the DCNF. They get to see finished information that has to be disseminated through normal channels. Members of the Gang of Eight, chairman and ranking minority members of the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, plus top House and Senate leaders, cannot rely on getting real-time intelligence, raw intelligence, or unfinished intelligence by sticking with their limited computers. They instead must travel elsewhere to access this highly sensitive information. The congressional intelligence chiefs usually go to Eisenhower Executive Office Building to view the data. The complex is not in the White House itself, but sits next to it in an ornate 19th century building built in the French Second Empire style. The building contains the world's most elaborate secure facilities known as Sensitive Compartmented Information Facilities, or the SCIF. Congressional officials can view raw intelligence at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, the National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, and 15 other intelligence agencies. In the agency, the CIA, the computers are hooked up so the intelligence won't go out of the agency, Russman said. Members of Congress would be forced to go to the CIA to view that information. The intelligence agencies and the congressional committees has not always been smooth. Relations between the CIA and the Senate Intelligence Committee nearly collapsed in rancor and discord during the Obama administration when senators and staffers were accused of stealing sensitive CIA information from a clandestine CIA facility. The Senate committee, led by then Chairman Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein, reviewed information about interrogation techniques at the secret CIA location in Virginia. Mistrust by both sides erupted when printed portions of material somehow left CIA custody, then turned up in the second floor Senate building, according to The Guardian. Critics wonder why raw intelligence can't be viewed on Capitol Hill computers, but intelligence officials told the DCNF that classifications would have to be downgraded before they could transmit some of the nation's most sensitive documents to the less capable congressional computer system. This would also greatly expand the number of people entitled to view the classified documents or tapes. The raw intelligence issue exploded recently when, in the final days of the Obama administration, the president expanded the sharing of raw satellite communications, phone calls, and emails collected by the National Security Agency to 16 other intelligence agencies without the previous safeguard protections. Warshak, who said he has routinely helped Democrats and Republicans view raw intelligence since 1990, called the recent Democratic attack temper tantrums. I wish they'd grow up and become adults, he mused. Yeah, don't we all? It's off of Western journalism. And as soon as the hamster catches up here, I'll tell you all about it. Tie-breaking vote to rescind Obama regulation. Mike Pence was called upon once again to cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate, this time to overturn an Obama-era regulation blocking states from denying federal funds to abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood. Last month when Pence first had to step into the cast. Try that again. As was the case last month when Pence first had to step in to cast the deciding vote to confirm Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, liberal Republican Lisa Murkowski, I think is how it's pronounced, of Alaska, and Susan Collins of Maine were the defectors, setting up the 50-50 tie. Both Murkowski and Collins Planned Parenthood and introduced legislation during the last Congress that sought to block Republicans from defunding the largest provider of abortion in the nation. Wednesday's vote was under the Congressional Review Act, which enables Congress to overturn regulations with a majority vote in both chamber and signature by the president. Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of Iowa, and Representative Diane Black, Republican of Tennessee, filed the CRA bill to overturn the Obama rule taking power away from the states to direct where block grant would go. State legislatures around the country have spoken out about their preference for prioritizing more comprehensive primary and preventative care providers for the receipt of Title X funding, the pair wrote in an op-ed for the Washington Examiner, and their voice should be respected by bureaucrats in the federal government. According to its 2014-2015 annual report, Planned Parenthood performed 323,999 abortion procedures in just 1 year. Taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize the abortion industry in this country, they wrote, nor should they be forced to foot the bill for an organization like Planned Parenthood that has displayed such blatant disregard for human life. Voted in February to overturn the rule 230 to 188. It appears Pence may be far more active than previous vice presidents in his role as president of the Senate. Joe votes during his entire 8-year tenure at the post, while Pence has already cast 2. All told, there have been a dozen vice presidents, 1/4 of the overall total, who served without ever casting a single tie-break vote, according to NPR. Roll Call reported that Murkowski and Collins were the most likely Republican senators to vote with former President Barack Obama. Their tallies were 72% and 76% respectively in 2013. It seems probable Pence will be making more trips to Capitol Hill to cast tie-breaking votes. The next article is off of BizPac Review. Hamster is a runnin'. Trump backs Flynn. No reasonable person should subject themselves to politicized witch hunt. Former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn has a story to tell, and he's willing to tell it if he's immune from prosecution. And President Donald Trump agrees that a general should seek immunity from the witch hunt. Mike Flynn should ask for immunity in that this is a witch hunt, excuse for big election loss by media and Dems of historic proportion. Following reports on Thursday that Flynn ordered to testify before Congress in exchange for immunity, his attorney, Robert Kellner, released a statement. General Flynn certainly has a story to tell, and he very much wants to tell it. Should circumstances permit, the statement read, no reasonable person who has the benefit of advice from counsel would submit to questioning in such a highly politicized witch hunt environment without assurances against unfair prosecution, Kellner wrote. And let me get that shut off. Don't want to hear that. Okay, General Flynn certainly has a story to tell, and he very much wants to tell it should circumstances permit, the statement read. No reasonable person who has the benefit of advice from counsel would submit to questioning in such a highly publicized witch hunt environment without assurances against unfair prosecution. Adding to the controversy, nowhere in the statement was the word immunity mentioned, and several people, including House Intelligence Committee Chairman Representative Devin Nunes, have denied that General Flynn asked for immunity. A spokesman for Nunes denied that the general offered to testify to HPSCI in exchange for immunity, corroborated by a Democrat aide on the panel as well, according to ABC News. It's normal to ask for assurances at this stage in order to protect oneself from having their words used to prosecute them, according to the New York Times. At this early stage, I wouldn't read anything into this request beyond smart lawyering, Washington lawyer Mark Zaid, a national security specialist, told the Times. In such a politically charged, high-profile national security case, I couldn't imagine not first asking for immunity. I would suspect both Congress and the FBI will first generate additional evidence from smaller players before deciding to General Flynn, he said. The Washington Post, New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal that first reported on Flynn requesting immunity are standing by their original reports. Kellner's full statement can be read in this article. And here's what it says. Statement by Robert Kellner, counsel to Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, retired. General Flynn certainly has a story to tell, and he very much wants to tell it should the circumstances permit. Out of respect for the committees, we will not comment right now on the details of discussions between counsel for General Flynn and the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, other than to confirm that those discussions have taken place. But it is important to acknowledge the circumstances in which those discussions are occurring. General Flynn is a highly decorated 33-year veteran of the U.S. Army. He devoted most of his life to serving his country, spending many years away from his family fighting this nation's battles around the world. He was awarded 4 Bronze Stars for actions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere in the War on Terror. He received the Legion of Merit twice and the Defense Superior Service Medal 4 times. He is a recipient of the Defense Department's Distinguished Service Award and the Intelligence Community Gold Seal Medallion for Distinguished Service, as well as numerous other decorations. Notwithstanding his life of national service, the media are awash with unfounded allegations, outrageous claims of treason, and vicious innuendo directed against him. He is now the target of unsubstantiated public demands by members of Congress and other political. He be criminally investigated. No reasonable person who has the benefit of advice from counsel would submit to questioning in such a highly prioritized witch hunt environment without assurances against unfair prosecution. Next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Trump attacks House Freedom Caucus members. President Donald Trump continues to use Twitter to vent his frustrations, and on Thursday he used the social media platform to attack members of his own party, urging Republicans to fight members of the House Freedom Caucus, a congressional group consisting of members who lean more conservative than their peers. The president added that these lawmakers will hurt the entire Republican agenda if they don't get on the team and fast. The Freedom Caucus will hurt the entire Republican agenda if they don't get on the team and fast. We must fight them and Dems in 2018. Immediately after the president issued the threat, Freedom Caucus members, Justin Amash, a Republican representative from Michigan, hit back, attacking Trump for failing to keep his promise and drain the swamp. And his tweet says, it didn't take long for the swamp to drain. Real Donald Trump. No shame, Mr. President. Almost everyone succumbs to the D.C. establishment. Representative Ted Yoho, of Republican of Florida, and I'm guessing that's how he pronounces his name. It's Y-O-H-O, Yoho or Yoho, also responded to the president, saying it was unfortunate he had used the widely unpopular online platform to claim the most conservative Republicans in Washington were actually hurting the Republican agenda. It says, we're not fighting the president, we're trying to honor what we ran on, Yoho told the MSNBC. Representative Thomas Massey, Republican of Kentucky, who is not a member of the House Freedom Caucus, also took to Twitter to defy the commander-in-chief, saying Trump's decision to go after Republicans proved he had become quite comfortable in Washington, D.C.'s swamp. It's a swamp, not a hot tub, he told the president. And his tweet actually reads, "Real Donald Trump, it's a swamp, not a hot tub. We both came here to drain it. Swamp care poll 17%. Sad." Adding that the health care plan Trump supported polled poorly, Massey demonstrated why many conservatives refused to support the bill, which was introduced by Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. After the very public back and forth, Ryan tried to intervene on the side of the president, saying he's just frustrated. Trump has enough reasons to be angry at conservatives who lean towards a more traditional approach to public policy. After all, the more conservative, in a sense, the less interventionist the lawmaker tends to be. As a result, these lawmakers tend to reject policies that align with big spending, military-loving establishment Republicans, and that just won't fly in Trump's vision for America. If members of the House Freedom Caucus and non-members in Massey's case remain as brave as they have appeared in the short period Trump has occupied the White House, this won't be the last time we'll be hearing from these freedom lovers. They might even block some very, very bad policies and help keep Trump busy throwing shade on Twitter. Trump puts out a couple tweets here. It says, if Representative Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and Raw Labrador would get on board, we would have both great health care and massive tax cuts and reform. Another one he puts out says, where are Representative Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, and repeal and replace Obamacare? I'd be satisfied if they just repeal it. The next one we have here is all the Liberty headlines. It says Trump administration lifts Obama 11-hour moratorium on coal mining on federal lands. President Trump and Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zink have signed several executive orders to free up access to coal on federal lands, reversing orders from the previous administration. Republican politicians and free market think tank scholars have applauded the moves, but industry executives say the deregulation won't spur immediate changes in coal production or profits. Former Interior Secretary Sally Jewell imposed a moratorium on leasing any additional federal lands for coal mining and production just days before Trump took office. In addition to reversing the moratorium, the executive orders confirm the removal of regulations from the Bureau of Land Management and direct the BLM, the National Park Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service to conduct reviews on oil and gas regulations and climate change policies. Western Congressional Caucus members in the House applauded moves by President Trump and the administration to roll back regulations that stifle coal production on public lands. Around 40% of coal production occurs on public land, said Representative Doug LeBorn, Republican of Colorado, in a press release. We don't need stifling restrictions. We need more responsible and efficient coal production to help get people back to work and our economy back on track. Restrictions on coal mining aren't the only thing standing in the way of prosperity for coal miners and energy companies. Many companies don't believe this wave of deregulation is enough to consider changing the types of energy production in which to invest resources and infrastructure. At the end of the day, coal will still have to compete with a host of other fuels. Rick Hertzinger, a spokesman for Cloud Peak Energy, told CNBC, utilities' long-term discussions are based on economics and the need for long-term certainty. Nicholas K. Atkins, chief executive of American Electric Power, said his company doesn't plan to change course due to Trump administration's executive orders. Our plans remain the same, he told CNBC. We're going to invest over the next 3 years $1.5 billion in renewables and transmission to optimize the grid. This industry is moving in a direction that really moves toward a clean energy economy. That's what our customers expect. That's what our shareholders expect. A Rutgers analysis found that these executive orders might not even on companies that focus on mining coal on federal lands. Those companies have enough coal on existing leases to last for 17 years with 2015 sales levels. The Rutgers analysis also noted that coal accounts for about a third of U.S. electricity production, down from about half a decade ago. Although the economic impact from deregulation might not be immediately significant for energy companies, environmental experts at the Heartland Institute, a free market think tank, were quick to note the massive economic costs from the Obama-era regulations. President Trump's executive order directing EPA to suspend, revise, or rescind President Obama's Clean Power Plan is a good first step in restoring sanity to American energy policy, said Isaac Orr, research fellow for energy and environment policy at the Heartland Institute at the organization's annual conference on climate change. Despite costing up to $39 billion and resulting in 68,000 people losing their jobs in the manufacturing sector each year, EPA's own analysis showed the CPP would reduce potential future global warming by only 0.019 degrees Celsius by 2100, an amount too small to be accurately measured or even the most sophisticated scientific equipment. This means the Clean Power Plan hurts American workers for no measurable environmental gain, said Orr. Several environmental groups, including the Sierra Club and Earth Justice and Montana Native American Tribe, quickly filed lawsuits in federal court to block Trump's deregulation. Reinstating coal leasing before fixing what's wrong with the program is like letting a patient leave the hospital before he needs surgery, said Chase Huntley, climate and program director for the Wilderness Society, in a press release. It doesn't make sense, especially when there is so little demand for more coal right now. Next article is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, State Attorney General's witch hunt against climate change deniers weakened but continues. Wednesday marked the one-year anniversary of the day an Army Democratic prosecutors unveiled a campaign to hunt down so-called climate change deniers. Constitutional experts have described the initiative as one of the more egregious attacks on the First Amendment in U.S. history. 1 year later, New York Attorney General's Eric Schneiderman's coalition of Attorney Generals United for Clean Power has disintegrated in the heat of its own abusive law enforcement practices. The same fate seemingly awaits former President Barack Obama's Clean Power Plan. The Competitive Enterprise Institute, caught in the crosshairs of the Climate Change Coalition of the Willing, marked the anniversary with a combination of celebration and vigilance. This was a law enforcement investigation. Schneiderman made clear that he was pushing a policy agenda to defend the climate change progress made under President Obama and to push the next president for even more aggressive action, said CEI General Counsel Sam Cosman in a statement. Schneiderman's coalition has fallen apart. Most of its members have left. The subpoenas served on us, Exxon by Virgin Islands, AG were quickly withdrawn, and the climate science debate that this gang tried to shut down is more energetic than ever, Cosman said. Where is that better demonstrated than by Tuesday's environmental executive order from the president? Trump announced the Environmental Protection Agency will begin unraveling the Obama administration's carbon emissions reduction plan that critics have blasted as a job-killing government overreach. By coal miners Tuesday as he signed the executive order. The president has said boosting U.S. fossil fuel production in pursuit of energy independence is a priority for his administration. My action today is the latest in a series of steps to create American jobs and to grow American wealth. We're ending the theft of American prosperity and rebuilding our beloved country, he said before signing the order at an EPA that clearly is moving in a different direction from the aggressive enforcement agency of the past 8 years. Not surprisingly, the climate change faithful are furious. Obama EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy sees all of her regulatory work going up in smoke. This is not just dangerous, it's embarrassing to us and our business on a global scale to be dismissing opportunities for new technology, economic growth, and U.S. leadership, she said in a statement. Nathan Richardson of the environmental extremist group Resources for the Future likened the executive order to the short list of America's truly shameful days. Among them, the Dred Scott decision, the Trail of Tears, Japanese internment, and Abu Ghraib, most of them symbolic of a larger national moral failure. Doubt, Richardson's opinion was quickly endorsed by Vox explainers and a New York Times reporter. Those entities need not fear the threat of a sweeping state-sponsored investigation into what they said and who they associate with, but the CEI and other research organizations that have challenged the flawed science of the climate change crowd have had such a probe hanging over them for months. Former Vice President Al Gore was on hand March 29th of 2016 when Schneiderman and 16 other Democratic attorney generals moved to take up their investigation campaign against ExxonMobil and other alleged violators. CEI soon after was targeted by the Virgin Islands Attorney General Claude Walker. The Attorney General sought kitchen sink subpoenas that plainly aimed at suppressing free speech and scientific inquiry, the nonprofit think tank sponsors. In June, Walker withdrew his subpoenas of ExxonMobil and CEI. General claimed he was looking into whether ExxonMobil had concealed its understanding of climate change from customers and investors. He served an astonishingly overbroad subpoena on a public policy organization, demanding that it reveal its internal communications and communications with allies. CEI's court motion stated he conceded in his briefing that his subpoena was unsupported by the statutory authority that he cited as justifying it, and he has undertaken a series of legal maneuvers to evade judicial scrutiny of his actions, even while continuing to threaten CEI. The legal battle goes on. In a similar battle, Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, part of the so-called Green 20, sought 40 years of ExxonMobil's documents in a subpoena. The company attorneys in September argued in a Texas court that if Healey's overly broad subpoena was allowed to stand, nothing is to stop state prosecutor from issuing a subpoena to a political opponent seeking decades of records on the theory that a disagreement about a policy continues or constitutes fraud. U.S. District Court Judge Ed Kincaid agreed that New York and Massachusetts investigations were politically motivated. The lawsuit remains in play, with Healey refusing to comply with congressional subpoenas. In November, a New York Supreme Court justice ordered Schneiderman to release common interest agreements with other state attorney generals that CEI had sought in an open records request. CEI's court victory is a blow to the anti-free speech campaign led by the New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, CEI's Kazman said in a statement. While the campaign by him and his cohorts that began in March of 2016 continues against those who disagreed with him on global warming, we are glad to see that it is being held subject to the basic laws of the land. Attorney Andrew Grossman has represented CEI in its legal actions against the attorneys general. Grossman and his Washington, D.C. based law firm also represented Wisconsin conservative activist Eric O'Keefe in a general lawsuit against prosecutors of the state's infamous John Doe investigation. The campaign finance probe launched by Milwaukee County District Attorney John Christholm, a Democrat, targeted dozens of conservative groups and Republican Governor Scott Walker. Investigators raided the homes of several citizens and seized millions of electronic communications in the secret dragnet ruled unconstitutional by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Grossman noted the similarities of these politically motivated investigations. In both instances, you have law enforcement officials using the powers of their office to target people on the basis of their opinions, the attorney said, adding that liberals increasingly have abdicated their positions as defenders of free speech. Grossman said the failure of the Climate Change Prosecutors Coalition should be the end of the story, but CEI isn't taking anything for granted. CEI is going to continue to make arguments for First Amendment rights, not just for themselves. They want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity, even those with whom they disagree. article is off of Judicial Watch, and it says, SARE orders U.S. Air Force to ditch anti-Muslim counterterrorism instructor. The Islamic terrorist front group that transformed the way U.S. law enforcement agencies conducted anti-terrorism training is ordering the Air Force to sever ties with an instructor it considers to be anti-Muslim. The question is, will the Trump administration cave to its demands? Under Barack Obama, the Council on American Islamic Relations, called SARE, a group that reportedly raises money for Hamas, wielded tremendous power and managed to bully law enforcement agencies at the local, state, and federal level to alter counterterrorism training materials deemed by the group to discriminate against Muslims. That includes getting the Federal Bureau of Investigation to purge anti-terrorism training curricula of material determined to be offensive to Muslims. Judicial Watch uncovered the scandal and obtained the FBI records based on troves of government documents. Judicial Watch subsequently published a special in-depth report on the scandal. SARE is not specifically named, but the records show that an undisclosed group of subject matter experts, or SME, determined the federal training material was offensive to Muslims. SARE also got police departments in Illinois to eliminate anti-terrorism training materials and instructors deemed anti-Muslim. As an example, SARE asserted that an instructor for the Lombard, Illinois police force wrote an article years earlier that included disparaging comments about the Prophet Muhammad. The course was called Islamic Awareness as a Counter-Terrorist Strategy, and departments in Lombard, Elmhurst, and Highland Park caved into SARE's demands. Keep in mind that SARE is a terrorist front group with extensive links to foreign and domestic Islamists. It was founded in 1994 by three Middle Eastern extremists, Omar Ahmad, Nihad Awad, and Rafiq Jabbar, who ran the American propaganda wings of Hamas, known then as the Islamic Association for Palestine. In 2008, SARE was a co-conspirator in a federal terror finance case involving the Hamas front group Holy Land Foundation. Read more in Judicial Watch's special report that focuses on Muslim charities. And there's a link here if you want to research that. You can pull this article up here and check that out. Judicial Watch also tried to find out if SARE got the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, to overhaul its anti-terrorism training, but the spy agency said it could neither confirm nor deny the existence of records involving meetings or communications with the Muslim rights group. The CIA asserted that the information is classified intelligence protected from disclosure. The response goes on to cite the statutes such as the CIA Act of 1949 and National Security Act of 1947 that allow the agency to hide even the most benign information from the American public. It's likely that the CIA met with SARE during the Obama years, or at least had communication with the extremist group, and it doesn't want the public to know about it. Time will tell if SARE's cozy relationship with the Obama administration will carry over into the new one. Regardless, the group was emboldened in the last 8 years and continues making demands in the name of Muslim rights. This week, it called on the military to get rid of a top counterterrorism instructor at the United States Air Force Special Operations School, and that's known as the USSAFSOS in Florida. The instructor, Patrick Dunleavy, teaches a course called The Dynamics of International Terrorism, designed to provide awareness and appreciation of the organization, motivation, operational capabilities, and the threats posed by terrorists on an international, national, and regional basis. It was designed for individuals with no previous anti-terrorism training and focuses on protective measures that government personnel and their families can employ to minimize threats. Dunleavy, the course instructor, is former Deputy Inspector General for the New York State Department of Corrections and has testified before Congress as an expert witness on the threat of Islamic radicalization in the nation's prison system. Dunleavy is also senior fellow at the decades-old nonprofit dedicated to investigating the operations, funding, activities, and front groups of Islamic extremists worldwide. The think tank, Investigative Project on Terrorism, known as the IPT, is recognized as comprehensive data center on radical Islamic terrorist cells, and its founder is a terrorism and national security expert who has advised Congress, the President, FBI, and National Security Council. After 9/11, he published a best-selling book documenting how one of the world's most notorious terrorist groups plotted the worst terrorist attack on American soil without detection or scrutiny by American authorities. Sarr uses Dunleavy's association with the IPT to call for his ouster as a military anti-terrorism instructor, asserting that the research center is an anti-Muslim propaganda mouthpiece and has made a number of false statements betraying a personal prejudice against Islam and Muslims. IPT's founder, Stephen Emerson, has a history of making Islamophobic statements, Sarr says, involving terrorist attacks that date back to the 1990s. The Islamic group reminds the commander of the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command at Hurlburt Field in Florida, Lieutenant General Marshall B. Webb, that under Obama military caved into its demands. As you may recall, in 2012, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, ordered the U.S. military to scour its training material to ensure it doesn't contain anti-Islamic content. Sarr writes in a letter to Lieutenant General Webb, Judicial Watch will monitor this situation to see how the Trump Department of Defense, or the DoD, handles these preposterous requests. Next article is off of Liberty Headlines. Refugee arrivals to skyrocket under new Trump plan. The U.S. State Department is ramping up refugee admissions back to more normal levels after it had slowed to trickle over the past month under President Donald Trump. WND has confirmed through a State Department spokesperson that the administration is set to more than double the number of refugees arriving in U.S. cities from the current 400 per week to 900 per week. On March 15th, a federal judge, Derek Watson in Hawaii, issued a nationwide injunction stopping the State Department from enforcing or implementing Sections 2 and 6 of President Trump's March 6 executive order. Section 6B lowers the cap on refugee arrivals to 50,000, down from the 110,000 level set by President Obama. After the court's ruling, which was upheld Wednesday by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the cap reverts back to the Obama level of 110,000. Consequently, the State Department continues to accept refugees, and this includes scheduling travel for refugees who have been screened and are otherwise approved for travel. The court order issued on March the 15th prohibits the enforcement of implementation of Section 6 of the executive order. The State Department spokesperson told WND. The EEO includes a cap on refugee admissions into the United States of 50,000 for fiscal year 2017. In accordance with the court order and consistent with both our operational capacity and our capacity under available funding, we have increased the current pace of refugee arrivals to approximately 900 individuals a week. Halfway through the fiscal year, the U.S. has already taken in 39,082 refugees, according to the State Department's Refugee Processing Center database. If the 900 per week number holds through the remainder of the fiscal year, it would mean the Trump administration would bring in 62,482 refugees for fiscal 2017, which ends on September 30th. While far lower than the 110,000 that Obama had wanted for this year, the 62,482 is not a historical low number. In fact, it's just barely under the per-year average of 64,002. As we have said repeatedly, Trump's refugee admissions are not at the mercy of the two rogue judges. A longtime refugee watchdog, Ann Concorin, in her blog post Thursday at Refugee Resettlement Watch, he can bring in any number under the ceiling set either by Obama, 110,000, or his reduced ceiling of 50,000. Concorin said Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has still not chosen a political appointment to head up the key position that runs refugee resettlement program. That position is Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for population, refugees, and migration. So the program continues to be run by entrenched federal bureaucrats with close ties to the 9 federal resettlement agencies. As Concorn points out, Trump's new target number of 62,480 refugees for 2017 falls right in line with the annual totals brought in by President George W. Bush and even several years under the Obama administration. In fact, the Bush administration was below the Trump target number in 2002, 2003, 2006, 2007, and 2008. Even Obama was below that number in 2011 and 12. And there's a link where you can click to see that if you would like to. It says, here are the year-by-year totals for refugee arrivals since 2002. I'm not going to read through all that, but they're here in this article if you want to see them. James Simpson, an economist and author who has written extensively about refugee resettlement, told WMD that there are 2 sides to the Trump administration that appear to be in conflict with each other. The establishment side has been poorly serving the president with misinformation about refugees and with misinformation about the House Freedom Caucus, which saved him from the disaster of passing Paul Ryan's version of Obamacare, Simpson said. Trump's March 6 executive order called for a 120-day pause in all refugee resettlement until additional vetting procedures could be created and implemented. A 90-day ban on visa travel from 6 predominantly Muslim countries, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Sudan, and Yemen, was also included in the order. Just under half of the 84,994 refugees who were entered who entered the U.S. in fiscal 2016 were Muslim, coming from Somalia, Syria, Sudan, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Burma, Uzbekistan, and other countries. At least 95% of the refugees sent to the U.S. are selected by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. They are initially screened by the UN and then screened further by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in cooperation with the FBI and other agencies. They are then sent to more than 300 U.S. cities and towns by the State Department, which contracts with 9 private nonprofit agencies, including the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, Church World Service, World Relief, Episcopal Immigration and Migration Ministries, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, the International Rescue Committee, and the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. Comey testified before Congress in 2015 that refugees from broken states, specifically Syria, were able to vet because the U.S. has no access to law enforcement data in Syria. The same principle could be applied to Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, account for, well, that doesn't make any sense. Try that again. The same principle could be applied to Somalia. Somalia and Iraq and Afghanistan account for the vast majority of Muslim refugees sent to the U.S. There we go. Several states, such as Texas and Tennessee, have pulled out of the federal refugee program, but the U.S. government continues to send them refugees. Filed a lawsuit against the federal government, claiming the continuation of the resettlement is a violation of the 10th Amendment. Do that. The next one we have is off BizPac Review. Muslim man's violent rage injures several as he yells Allah Akbar. Not in Paris. Yep, just 30 miles from where I currently reside. Wow. Let's not jump to conclusions. Just because he's violent and yelling that he wants to kill everyone and Allah Akbar at the same time doesn't mean he's a Muslim terrorist. And waged a jihad-like rant last week using the familiar battle cry Allah Akbar, but it didn't happen in Mosul or even Baghdad. It took place in the small Midwestern Indiana. In this, if you want to see the video, it says, when officers at a Muncie Goodwill store, in response to a request for assistance, they found all, age 24, arguing loudly with store employees. They all then tried to break the hand of an officer, him in custody, and charged at another. Police finally restored the use of resorted to the use of a taser to restrain him and place him in handcuffs, 8 News reported. But Bilal wasn't finished. He repeatedly kicked at the officers with both feet while shouting Allah Akbar, or Allah is great. Reported that she was shopping in the store with her 3 children when she heard the man screaming at the front, frightening her. He had become very irate and was screaming at one of the employees, and then grabbed him by the collar and started pushing him and screaming, "Are you scared?" Customer Chastity Fraley told Wish. "He was just so full of rage and violence. I never seen anything like that before," she added. That's when she began moving her kids. I could take my kids away, so I could take my kids away from the situation, because they got very scared at that point. And then I heard him say, "I'm going to kill everyone in here," she said. At that point, another employee, a female, opted to calm Bilal down. With her, she kind of used a softer tone with him at first, Fraley recalled. "Let's talk about this. What's the matter? Can we take it outside?" she said. But that only seemed to enrage him even more. And female employee, he violently grabbed her around the neck, and he was just punching and whatever he could do to her, she said. A bunch of employees came out to keep him away from the customers. Bilal reportedly grew upset when he attempted to convert an employee to Islam, and the employee wasn't interested. Employees did a great job of protecting the customers. They were protecting one another and protecting us, she said. They did an excellent job at keeping him in a somewhat secured area. They were telling people to get back, trying to protect people in the store and one another. Law enforcement reported that Bilal continued attacking them even after he was admitted to the hospital, while Tom, let's see, I don't know, that they put some typos in here. While they tried to restrain him to the hospital bed, Bilal was preliminarily charged with battery of police resisting law enforcement, disorderly conduct, battery with injury, intimidation, and strangulation. Goodwill released a statement that says, because of the actions of Goodwill store management and the Muncie police, no one was injured, the statement said. It is now a police matter, and Goodwill is cooperating. Customers and employees is the top priority of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. Folks saw it as part of a pattern of creeping jihad in the United States. Comments underneath this, if you care to see them, tweets. I like the one that has a picture of Obama on a microphone saying, "Now let's not jump to conclusions. Just because they're a Muslim terrorist doesn't mean they're Muslim terrorists." The next one we've got is off of Liberty Headlines. It says, Sessions urged to clean up ideological rot at the DOJ. Experts on civil rights is asking Attorney General Jeff Sessions to clean up the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division by removing political activists from leadership, ideological rot, and stopping its bureaucrats from abusing their authority. The letter was initiated by J. Christian Adams, a former attorney in the DOJ Civil Rights Division, who now leads nonprofit Public Interest Legal Foundation. Signatories include Hans von Spassky of Heritage Foundation, William Pendley of the Mountain States Legal Foundation, Tim Wildman of the American Family Association, Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, and Joel Mandelman, U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. The letter charges that the Civil Rights Division during Barack Obama's administration served purely ideological ends with rigid, unmatched in other federal offices. Entrenched federal bureaucrats jettisoned precepts like equal enforcement in favor of political and radicalized dogmas, it says. Adams said the most important position General Sessions will fill in the DOJ is the AGG, or I'm sorry, is the AAG for Civil Rights. For years, the radicalized Civil Rights Division heavily handed advanced leftist causes with respect to voting, law enforcement, immigration, and others. While constitutional rule of law was considered a nuisance, General Sessions has an opportunity to begin the course correction necessary to protect all Americans from civil rights abuses. It was that division, when Adams still was working with the DOJ, that the agency refused to finish nearly completed prosecution of several new Black Panther Party members voter intimidation in the 2008 election. WND reported at the time 2 party members were filmed standing in front of the entrance to a Philadelphia polling station in black uniforms, wielding a club. According to complaints, both men were pointing at voters and shouting racial slurs, using such phrases as white devil and "killed by the black man cracker." But then Attorney General Eric Holder ordered the cases dropped. Shortly after, Adams resigned. I was told in section management that cases are not going to be brought against black defendants on behalf of white victims, Adams said in a testimony before the Civil Rights Commission. Adams was backed up by Christopher Coates, former head of the voting section for the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Coates had led the original investigation of the new Black Panther Party. Coates stated in testimony, "I had people who told me point blank that they didn't come to the voting rights section to sue African American people." A new letter offers guidance to Sessions on how the problem should be addressed, including how the next Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights should be chosen. The letter states, during the Obama administration, the division ideological ends with rigidity unmatched in other federal offices. Entrenched federal bureaucrats jettisons precepts like equal enforcement in favor of political and radicalized dogmas. Together, we have witnessed longstanding conventions held from the mid-20th century prove outmoded and discovered new fronts in need of protection are concerned with particular respect to voting. Discrimination, dilution, and poor processes will always be constants, yet the victims can vary in our contemporary era. The letter pleads for the leadership in the division to be taken away from political activists. Perhaps one of the greatest myths pushed by the Obama DOJ's apologists was the claim of being the driving force for voter protection. That administration's record paints an entirely different picture. In the 8-year period, hardly any cases were filed under the Voting Rights and National Vote Registration Acts. At no time did the division bring a suit against voting discrimination or intimidation on its own. Yet the public perception was that the previous attorneys general were somehow vigorous champions of civil rights. Then there's the ideological rot that already has been laid bare by the Office of Inspectors General. That office found in a 250-page report the toxic manner in which the division placed preferences on voting rights victims, cohorts, and bullied employees from daring to enforce the law in a colorblind fashion. Obama's picks, the letter charges, did not believe the civil rights laws should protect all Americans. Further, division employees posted on a public website criticisms of workers who were openly Christian. Finally, the letter notes the millions of dollars taxpayers paid out after division employees brought faulty actions. Repeatedly, employees abused their former powers under the Voting Rights Act by mandating racial gerrymandering in states like Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and South Carolina to create partisan advantages. States and individual parties saw repeated success in overturning these matters. The division could best move forward by adopting race-neutral Voting Rights Act enforcement, ending its political campaigns against state photo voter ID requirements, and prosecuting voter intimidation cases, the letter advises. Next article is off of BizPac Review, and it says, McCain swears he's making no deals as he meets with Dems on Gorsuch and the filibuster. Republican Senator John McCain is having informal conversations with state Democrats about Neil Gorsuch nomination to the Supreme Court, while cautioning he does not see a deal on preserving the filibuster for future nominations as a realistic prospect. Bloomberg Politics reports that Arizona Republican hopes to avert a confirmation showdown next week, where a successful Democratic filibuster of Gorsuch's nomination would force Republicans to change the rule of the chamber in order to end debate on his nomination, the so-called nuclear option. Though Bloomberg says he hopes to reach a deal with Democrats on the nomination, the senator disputes this characterization of his efforts. "No, I'm not reaching out to Democrats," McCain told Daily Caller Kerry Pickett. "I've had conversations with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. That's all. There's no gang, there's no negotiations. Just having some conversations. No deal, no negotiations." Current Senate rules require the chamber to hold a procedural vote closing debate on nomination or piece of legislation. The vote requires the support of 60 senators. By abolishing this rule, Republicans can proceed straight to a floor vote on Gorsuch's nomination, which only needs a simple majority to pass. Senate Democrats abolished this rule for lower court and executive branch nominee in 2013 at the direction of former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. McCain is one of the 3 remaining members of the Gang of 14 still serving in Congress. The Gang was a bipartisan group of senators that reached an accord on confirming Bush-era judicial nominees without invoking the nuclear option in 2005. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has not weighed in on the prospect of a deal with Democrats, but insists that Gorsuch will be confirmed Friday, April 7th, without Democratic support. "We're going to get Judge Gorsuch confirmed," he told reporters on Tuesday. "There will be an opportunity for the Democrats to invoke cloture. We'll see where that ends." The Democratic leader, who will be out here shortly, says that we will not get. So that is a good question to ask him, but it'll really be up to them how the process to confirm Judge Gorsuch goes forward. The next article is off of teaparty.org, and it says, "Breaking: McConnell stuns media, announces fate of Gorsuch." Liberals have been trying to destroy every action Trump has announced, including the nomination of Neil Gorsuch, but they're going to be disappointed on that front too. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, told reporters on Tuesday that Judge Gorsuch will be confirmed to the Supreme Court on April the 7th via the Daily Caller. "This is huge news, and I bet the liberals are losing their minds in anger." McConnell of the nomination, but he also stated that the Democrats would have the opportunity to invoke cloture. "This is a motion to bring a debate to a quick end," the word being derived from the French word meaning ending or collusion or conclusion. There we go. The Democrat leader allegedly won't get cloture, but according to McConnell, it's up to the left as to how Gorsuch will be confirmed in the upcoming days. How will he be confirmed is still unclear at this time. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer stated before that he and others would try to filibuster Gorsuch's nomination this month after his hearings were concluded. The Republicans need 60 senators to move Gorsuch's nomination to the floor. With 52 Republican members, 8 Democrat votes are necessary. Which Democrats will vote for Gorsuch is also a mystery, but hopefully some will see that Gorsuch is the right person for the job and put their anti-Trump agenda aside for once. The GOP can still confirm Gorsuch if they change Senate rules to the nuclear option, which is where the filibuster of Supreme Court nominees is abolished. In 2013, the Democrats in the Senate for the lower court judges and nominees of the executive branch, which was led by Harry Reid, then Senate Minority Leader. To keep this filibuster in place, the more moderate Democrats may make a deal with the Republicans and side with the GOP to confirm Gorsuch. Some of the more liberal Republicans are against removing the filibuster and going with the nuclear option, such as Senators Lisa Murkowski from Alaska and Susan Collins from Maine. They do not wish to overturn this rule of the chamber, which is based on consensus votes, but McConnell claims the Republicans would support the measure if it were necessary. If Gorsuch is able to be confirmed next week, he will be joining the Supreme Court at an opportune time and will be able to participate in the April sitting, which may be the last time justices will listen to arguments until the fall. The first case of the High Court will be on April the 17th. Many Republicans are confident that Gorsuch will be confirmed, just as some Democrats have come forward and expressed their belief in the judge moving into the Supreme Court, because Gorsuch is backed by President Trump. However, many of the Democrats may vote against him out of spite. The liberals need to keep their personal feelings out of the equation and start doing what is best for this country. Gorsuch follows the footsteps of Justice Anton Scalia, a great former associate justice in the Supreme Court before his passing in 2016. Gorsuch will do great things, and the liberals need to recognize that. Hopefully next week, Gorsuch will be sitting in the Supreme Court where he belongs. The next article is off of Liberty Writers. It says, she's a hero. Melania Trump just marched on stage and said one sentence that will make women everywhere cheer. This woman really is something special. Melania Trump is far more than just a pretty face, and today she proved that to the world. Melania took center stage at the International Women of Courage conference today and gave a speech that, to put it simply, will blow your socks off. However, it was a single sentence from this incredible speech that really brought all home. It said, whenever women are diminished, the entire world is diminished with them. Yes, they are. I'm looking at you, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Libya, and many others. She went on to add, however, whenever women are empowered, towns and villages, schools and economies are empowered, and together we are all made stronger with them. So true. Women are an unbelievably important part of our society, and we need to remember that. Also, unlike the propagandists at USA Today would have you believe, hijabs do not promote feminism. I'm not saying that they should be illegal, but we can't lie to ourselves. If you take anything home from the First Lady's speech, let it be this. Together, we must declare that the era of allowing the brutality against women and children is over, while affirming that the time for empowering women around the world is now. So now let us stand in unity with her and the other incredible women worldwide in fighting this injustice. Of Liberty Writers, it says, veterans across America saluting proudly after hearing what Trump did for them moments ago. President Trump signed into law an act of Congress that honors Vietnam veterans with their own day of recognition, says the White House. Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 will now designate March the 29th as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Amen. All of our veterans deserve praise, but it's great that Vietnam veterans are finally starting to earn the praise that they deserve. God bless the vets. And the bill was co-sponsored by Senator Pat Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, and Senator Joe Donnelly, Democrat of Indiana. The bill was passed in the Senate last month and just recently got past the House this week. According to the Olean Times-Herald, Toomey held a phone call on Monday to talk about this National Vietnam War Veterans Day. He said the following: some of them were actually treated quite poorly, and that was a tragic period in our history driven by people's perceptions of the war. Fortunately, that I think is behind us now, and I hope and I believe we've gotten to a place where the American people realize how much we really should be grateful to the men and women who served this country in Vietnam during that very, very difficult time. When many Vietnamese, or try this again, when many Vietnam veterans came back from the war, they were attacked, spat on, and disparaged. It was a shameful time. Let us help remedy this. If Toomey's bill is signed by Trump, then March 29th will forever be designated as the Vietnam Veterans Recognition Day. The next article is off BizPac Review. It says, California Dem steals famous Texas slogan to prove she means business and gets laughed at. Senator Kamala Harris raised a rallying cry for her big bad state of California, but the effort resulted in collective social media laughter. She says, no, you don't want to mess with California. Retweet if you agree. The Democrat tweeted Tuesday, linking to an interview of Governor Jerry Brown with Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press. Apparently, Harris thought "Don't mess with California's" stance was somewhat on par with "Don't mess with Texas" declaration, but it seems no one finds the lefties in the Golden State even slightly intimidating. To put it in perspective, Harris is the senator who complained that she wouldn't vote for Gorsuch because he's a stickler for the law. No joke. And there's a series of tweets. One says, "Haha," or "What, cupcake? Please do everyone a favor and Cal-X it." And there's a bunch of other ones on here. It says, and the governor's threat to roll the Republicans right out of this town was not exactly troubling. A federal government just can't arbitrarily, for political reasons, punish the state of California. That's number one. Number two, California is America. We're 12%, Brown said. We're the invocation capital, high-tech, agriculture, 40 to $50 billion industry, he added. You don't want to mess with California because you're going to mess with the economy, and that could blow up in your face in a gigantic recession and roll the Republicans right out of this town. Twitter users quickly put out Harris's fire with a solid reality check. One says, "I support you, but please stop with the RT if you agree stuff. It's lazy, it's ineffective, we need action." Another one says, "No, we just laugh at your lunatics." There's a whole bunch of those. Oh my goodness. So if you want to chuckle, there's your chuckle. The next one we have is off of BizPack Review, and it says, Tucker asks the question on every conservative's mind: what if the GOP blew off laws like the Democrats? What conservative hasn't wondered how they get away with it? Tucker Carlson wants to know what kind of country America would be if Republicans acted like Democrats in ignoring the law. Carlson slammed Massachusetts State Representative Michelle Du Bois during Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson Tonight on Wednesday, calling her out for her reckless actions and allegedly tipping off illegal immigrants to impending raids by immigration and customs enforcement officials. Du Bois thinks so little of those laws she was elected to uphold, Carlson argued, that she actively encourages people to defy or ignore them. That's not just ironic, it's reckless, he added. We live in a society based on the expectation that good people will follow rules and those who don't will be punished, he said, noting that the rule of law is not just some fantasy idea that Superman upholds. Undermine it, and at some point civilization starts to fall apart, Carlson said, pointing to examples of how the rule of law allows Americans to have secure bank accounts and take medicine without fear of being poisoned. He believes Democrats like Du Bois may soon reap what they are sowing, or that should be reap what they are sowing by playing this dangerous game. How long before the other side responds in kind on behalf of their preferred causes, Carlson asked. What if Republican officials stopped upholding federal gun laws because they disagreed with the policies, or if a Republican governor refused to send police to protect an abortion clinic under attack, Carlson said in giving examples. What would happen if Republicans started acting like Democrats and behaving like laws don't matter, he concluded. The country wouldn't last long. And that's all I have for you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that, and that way you'll stay informed.